Here we go. I'm going in for the kill, but I'm doing it for a friend, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get ready for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Hello, Antonio. Hello, Matthew. How are we doing, lads? Are we prepared? Can you be prepared? Is there a way of being prepared for this weekend? Because I'm not sure there is. I've been looking forward to it all week. Like, literally, I've been sitting at work. Not really working, just imagining what could happen over the course of this weekend, because it is going to be absolute chaos, I'm sure. Already we've had two free practices and they've gone both ways. Like, anything could happen in this Grand Prix, and I'm so ready for all of it. Like, if it's anywhere near as good as the last 3 or 4 Grand Prix we've had, hands down the best season that we've ever seen. Like, last weekend in Saudi Arabia was supposed to be boring. It was supposed to be a bit of a rubbish track. It was supposed to be very fast, but a street circuit, and not really deliver too much. Bang! Best race of the season. Undoubtedly. A couple of weeks before that, Brazil. Supposed to be, okay. Coming off the back of, like, Mexico especially. Bang. Brilliant race. One of the best drives that you're going to see from Lewis Hamilton, from 20th to first, over the sprint, over the race. Absolutely phenomenal. Like, I just don't know what more this season can offer. We've seen everything. We've seen red flags. We've seen races postponed because of the rain. We've seen, like, the Spa incident that was absolutely stupid. But yeah, we've seen absolutely everything going down. Hello, Jeet. What is my job outside my YouTube channel? Was just curious. I'm a teacher, which is different. It's a different job. But no, I sort of fell into it, and I do really like it, but not sure how long it's gonna take me for. You know what I mean? Getting to the point now where maybe need a little bit of a change, a little bit of something else to do. Let's talk about the championship, shall we? Because let's just delve straight into it. The statistics don't lie. We're at this race, the second time ever in Formula One's history that two drivers go into the final race on the same points. How on earth have we got to this position? We've had the longest season in Formula One history on the back of a pandemic, where we've had various races cancelled and changed, like Turkey came into the calendar. All of a sudden, we had Canada drop out, Japan drop out, Australia drop out. So many changes, so many twists and turns in this season, and yet it brings us perfectly poised for a final race between these two. Verstappen, 369.5 points. Lewis Hamilton, 369.5 points. I just don't think you could write it. There are films that don't have this good a storyline. Like, it is absolutely astounding that we have been able to get to this point in the season, and we still have no idea who is going to win this championship. Like, everyone has been asking me this week, even people that don't like Formula One, people that I've never realised knew anything about Formula One whatsoever, have had this on the tip of their tongue and have asked me who I think is going to win. And genuinely, I think it is almost unpredictable. It is so close to being absolutely 50-50. Either driver deserves to win it. We've seen Verstappen throughout the season, tenacious, just so incredibly quick over the course of the season, has really stepped up into his role at Red Bull. He's turned 23, 24 throughout the season, and he is not super experienced, but obviously does have quite a few seasons in Formula One now, and I think that's starting to really show. Like, he kicked on over the last couple of seasons, but my goodness me, he's kicked like a mule this season, has jumped up to being one of the best drivers I think I've ever seen in my lifetime. And Lewis Hamilton, just consistently there. Mr. I will always be in this championship battle. Like, we've seen it. 2008, he won his first world championship, and then McLaren kind of disappeared from there. But as soon as he came to Mercedes, just absolutely flew with this team. Only Nico Rosberg has been able to take a title off of him in this era of Formula One, and they have just shown every single year that they will not be denied. Like, I saw earlier that there's lots of people that have worked at Mercedes and never worked in a year where they haven't won the World Championship title. Like, Mercedes have not been around too long. We think Brawn GP started in 2009. That then became this Mercedes team we know today. They have not been around the block for overly long, yet they have won everything and anything they can in this era of Formula One by just being obscenely good, just consistent beyond belief, and having a car that has been by far and away in the past 2 or 3 seasons just head and shoulders above anyone else. Like how they've been able to find the pace compared to everybody else on the grid is just astounding to me. But Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, both of them deserve this championship. Both of them have done everything they possibly can this season, and yet we don't know who is going to be there. We have got a few things to talk about just in terms of Abu Dhabi, to be fair. It's going to be crazy, mainly because we've got a brand new track. Where's my button gone? There it is. We've got a brand new track layout, the updated Abu Dhabi circuit. Obviously, Karun Chandok has been talked about on Sky continually for his work on this new sort of style circuit. The white there is the original circuit, how it used to look last year when Max Verstappen took the victory here. And you can see now this new red circuit, a lot higher speed and taken away a few of those really dull, low speed corners. And the drivers have been fairly happy with it overall. Like, generally speaking, apart from Kimi Räikkönen, everyone had good things to say about most of the track. But Kimi Räikkönen, being Kimi Räikkönen, was a little bit moody and a little bit grumpy about it. But by the by, that is just Kimi, isn't it? You know, the old turn 5, 6, and 7 that you can see on the right-hand side of the screen there, that sort of white chicane into a hairpin, is now just one smooth turn 5 corner. And I think that is going to be our first real overtaking opportunity. Because down into turn 1, it's a very quick left-hander, 90 degree, almost over 90 degree, sort of nearly 100 degree left-hander. And then some very speedy, swooping corners through 2, 3, 4. You then get to turn 5 very, very quickly. And turn 5, I think, could really be the first overtaking opportunity. And genuinely, I think we could see drivers, you know, battling from turn 5 all the way up to the second corner that I think is going to be an overtaking opportunity in turn 6 towards the top of the screen there. I think that's a real overtaking opportunity too. You then come back in on yourself as well. So even if you can get up the inside in turn 6, on turn 7 you're on the outside, which always, I really like corners like that where you do have to consistently get ahead in one corner and make it stick around the outside in the second corner too. So that's been replaced as well. We then got the new turn 9, which is a super fast left-hander towards the bottom there. You can see again, it used to be a bit of a chicane and then a left-hander just over 90 degrees. But now a swooping, really, really quick turn 9. And as I said, I think cars could follow and be side by side pretty much from turn 5 all the way through turn 9, possibly into the turn sort of 10, 11 section, even up to turn 12. We could see cars side by side for almost an entire lap here, because all of those corners, super high speed, both of those corners in 5, 6, and 9 have all the opportunity for a driver to overtake in, but also a really good defensive line too, especially through 6 and 7. Like, you've got that ability to go on the inside and then cut out onto the outside of the second corner, or vice versa. You know, you can go for the outside line, almost get yourself a little bit more traction going into 7, and then fight a little bit on the inside into turn 7, but then you've got a really long straight, so you need to get the power down as quickly as possible. Down through turn 9, really fast turn 9, turn 10, 11, 12, and then you're into that sort of hotel section, which has also been changed just slightly. Obviously, you can't really see that it's been changed that much because the red lines and the white lines pretty much overlap through that section. But yeah, just towards the end of the lap, the corners have just been smoothed out a little bit. Instead of them being like really harsh 90-degree corners over and over again, sort of boxing you in that hotel section. Obviously, they couldn't change too much. There is a giant hotel over the track there. But you can see they've just made some subtle changes to those corners. Just allows you to take a little bit more speed in. And when Karun was talking about it, he was talking mainly about the fact that that section used to be so heavy on your tire temperatures. Like, the really, really slow corners just absolutely burn through the rubber and just light up the tires like you wouldn't imagine through that section. So they've tried to dull that down a bit so that you've got a little bit more traction going towards turn 1, turn 2. and then you can sort of, battle into turn 5 so that you're not just dead and buried in that final third sector. There are 3 DRS zones as well, which this track doesn't show, but I've got another one for you. Of course I have. There's 3 DRS zones. Obviously, as I said, out of that turn 5, where I think you've got the first overtaking opportunity, you're going around that turn 5 in a really long run to turn 6. Oh, James, you can't watch quali. Gutted, mate. But you'll be there for Sunday evening without looking at my phone till about 10 p.m. Sunday. I mean, you'll do very well if you can manage to dodge this news, to be honest with you. I think it's going to be a very, very tough piece of news to dodge. Hello, Minev, mate. You're right. Yeah, what was I saying? The 2 DRS zones, so both sort of back-to-back DRS zones as well. So this is what I'm saying. This adds another element to me. I know that I've just talked about the hotel section and the fact that they've changed all that, but we could see cars turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, get side by side for turn 5, DRS down into turn 6. Let's say you overtake into turn 6, you then lose DRS to your opponent down towards the super fast turn 9 and the start of the third sector. Like, that is just insane to me. There's going to be so many flip-flaps there. There's going to be so many people that gain a position and then lose a position down into turn 9 and vice versa, where people, try and battle really, really hard down into turn 6 and then just can't quite battle it that much into turn 9 as well. So it bodes well for overtaking and side-by-side action, in my opinion. I know that there's a lot of people saying that it's still not quite there. I think the only problem is that hotel section. Even though it's made quicker, turn 13, 14, it's still tricky to follow behind somebody else. Like, you really do have to try and make up that time in the first sector, down the pit straight, through 1, 2, 3. You have to really get up close and personal to the car in front of you if you can, because by the time you get around to the third sector, I think that third sector is going to bode really poorly for these cars in particular, being able to follow one another. And obviously, if they can't follow one another, then they won't hit that DRS zone into that second sector. If they don't get DRS, we've seen that these cars are not super great at overtaking without DRS. That is like the main qualm I have with this season is we haven't seen too much overtaking without any DRS involvement. A lot of the overtaking, and a lot of the drivers wait for that DRS zone to overtake, which is also a problem as well, because they don't want to take risks in other places where they know they're going to have such a massive mechanical advantage going down a DRS zone compared to their rival. We've seen so many overtakes in DRS zones. I think, again, we're going to see DRS zone overtakes, but it is a little bit disappointing that we don't see more overtakes in those corners without any DRS, like aiding the drivers and, pushing those cars behind to get that little bit of an extra boost. But yeah, it's all about that third sector for me. If you can stay behind just enough, you can keep your tyres that little bit cooler. It's kind of what they tried to do in the hotel section, keep those tyres a little bit cooler. If you can do that, then maybe you can just about get yourself over the line to the point where you can actually, carry that speed all the way through the first sector, second sector, third sector, and so on. Let's have a little look at, again, the Drivers' Championship and sort of how we got here. I do just want to sort of reminisce with you guys and maybe talk about what your favourite moments were, what your favourite races were this season, because there's been so many really, really good races. I was just flicking through it whilst I was getting ready for the stream, and 21 races, and I'm going to say it, I think like 18 of them have been absolutely brilliant. Like, genuinely can't think of like more than 3 races where I've been like, that was a bit boring. And most of those have been towards the beginning of the season, to be fair. Is there DRS in the next generation of cars? I don't think that's been confirmed, but if you do look at like the 2022 mock-up car, I think there will be. I think there still will be DRS. Maybe if DRS becomes a problem, because the reason that DRS was brought in is because none of the cars could overtake one another. Like, it was literally, there was a couple of seasons where, or a season or so, where there was just no overtakes because these cars just cannot follow behind in dirty air, especially through those low speed areas. So they brought in DRS as this, like, okay, as long as you can stay close enough, like that you actually it looks like you warrant an opportunity to go forward and battle with the car in front of you, then we'll introduce this sort of DRS system. It gives you, as the attacking driver, the benefit, because obviously we want to see attacking racing. That is more enjoyable to watch, right? You want to see more overtakes than less. That is, maybe why we'll talk about Monaco in a second, why Monaco didn't really go down too well. Is that, we want to see more overtakes. But DRS, yeah, will Antonio, there you go. DRS will be at least for 1 year as the new cars. Yeah, I think they'll keep it with the first year, see how the cars do. If it's too much of an advantage now, because I think the thing is, right, they brought in DRS because there was no opportunity for overtaking. Now, if there's loads of opportunity for overtaking and DRS becomes a problem where actually the driver without DRS just can't get anywhere close to the driver with DRS, then they might take it away over the next couple of seasons or so. I think that will be the way that it goes. They'll bring it in, they'll keep it how it is, especially because they've brought in all the DRS, equipment, and all the teams have got the DRS stuff set up effectively, even for the new season. I think they'll keep DRS for 1 year, and then we'll see how it goes. Hello, how we doing? You right? Isn't overtaking supposed to be easier next year? Yeah, that's what I mean. So overtaking is supposed to be easier, and therefore DRS might be sort of scrapped later on, as Formula Car wants it to be. It might be scrapped later on if overtaking becomes too easy with DRS. Okay, let's have a little look at the season then. Oh, you can't see my cursor, but you can see where it is because I am. It's exciting to me. We're just gonna sort of scroll through and see. Oh, what have I done? Oh dear, I clicked on Portugal. I also couldn't see my own cursor, which is maybe a mistake. Okay, let's sort of go through and have a little chat about how we got to this point, because it still boggles my mind that we are at a point where both of these drivers have equal points. Lewis Hamilton won the first Grand Prix of the year in Bahrain, and it was a great race. I genuinely thought that Max Verstappen was going to start the year with a bang and get the win, but Lewis Hamilton, just a little bit of experience maybe, kind of helps him around. And I watched the highlights for some of these earlier races in the season, because I'm going to be honest, lots of it had slipped out of my mind because of the amount of sheer madness we've seen in the last few races or so. But Bahrain was actually a really good race, and so was Imola. Imola was excellent. In the wet, Lewis Hamilton made a mistake, remember, hit into the wall at one point. Looked like his race was completely and utterly over. That was the first sort of mistake we saw from Hamilton this year, and we're talking quite a bit about Hamilton making mistakes in various races. It was quite early in the season he was making these mistakes, actually. Imola was the first one. And then we moved to Portugal. Portugal was a bit meh. Spain was a bit meh. But I don't think we sort of realised how important these podiums were going to be, because we're still so early in the season. Lewis Hamilton had won 3 out of the first 4 races, and even in the race where he'd crashed into a wall, he'd managed to get second place. So we were all sort of like, oh, this is going to be maybe another Mercedes, masterclass, another Mercedes, just run away with it. And it's a little bit of a damp squib. By the end of the season, we've got 3 races left, but nobody's actually fighting for anything anymore. But then, suddenly it changed. Monaco was a real turning point. And I don't think it gets the credit that it deserves, because it was an absolutely boring race. It was really, really dull. But it did add to this storyline. It started to show those Mercedes cracks. It started to show the chinks in the armour that were there for Red Bull to exploit. Lewis Hamilton, remember, qualified way down the grid, nowhere near the top 3. And then obviously we didn't have any overtaking really whatsoever in Monaco. And Lewis Hamilton didn't get nowhere near a win. Valtteri Bottas was, the closest Mercedes to a podium, and then his wheel nut stayed on for the next 48 hours. They couldn't get the tyre off. Monaco was a real turning point. And as much as it was the most boring race of the year, it was also probably the most important race of the year. It was really, really important, because I think it just allowed other teams to realise, maybe Mercedes do have a few issues. Maybe they won't be this, imperious drive that we've seen from them over the last few years, and that maybe just put some question marks over the Mercedes team. And that came to fruition, really. We saw Azerbaijan, again, neither Mercedes on the podium, and then it started to really look like, actually, this might be a year that's going to be interesting. Azerbaijan, Perez takes the win. You could argue that, yes, Lewis Hamilton should have taken the win in Azerbaijan, but again, it was another mistake. It was a mistake that he made, putting the brake bias on wrong. Max Verstappen obviously hit the wall because his tyre blew out, something that he could not do anything about, really, apart from pit earlier, but they wouldn't have expected the tyre to just completely implode on itself like it did, and then hit into the wall. I guess they had Stroll to sort of go off of. Oh wait, did Stroll hit the wall? Stroll hit the wall first, and then Verstappen hit the wall after, right? I'm remembering those the right way around, I think. So Max Verstappen kind of had Lance Stroll to go off of, but still you would expect that was a one-off. But actually it wasn't. It was both of those cars that went super long on that stint. Both had tyre issues and both hit into the wall. Lewis fans talking too much. Please, Red Bull, bring it home. By any chance, you're a Red Bull fan? Azerbaijan was great. Sergio Perez getting his second win in Formula One, his first win for Red Bull, and what would be one of 10 wins for Red Bull this season, actually. It didn't look like Red Bull were... It looked like Red Bull were going to challenge, possibly. Like, they looked good. I wouldn't say that they looked, season-defining, championship challenging until we saw Sergio Perez win this race and then go on this run with Max Verstappen in France, Austria. Like, I think that was when people were like, ooh, this is going to be really exciting. This is actually going to be maybe not just a Mercedes season. Obviously, the changes came in earlier in the season. There were a few changes after last year, and they did hinder Mercedes. I think Formula One did the right thing in that they tried to make it a little bit more entertaining by just hindering Mercedes that tiny little bit. But that really started to come to fruition. Paul Ricard, and then we've got Austria and Austria again, Styria and Austria if you want, where Max Verstappen was just imperious. He just won race after race after race. It was really, really consistent from Max Verstappen. And to be honest with you, I know that both of the Mercedes were on the podium in the first Austria race, but I don't think they looked too close to me. I think Max Verstappen at this point, this sort of run where Verstappen won in Monaco through to the Austria races, was where people were like, holy mama, this is going to be a Red Bull year. How are Mercedes going to throw away the final championship of this era that they've absolutely defined? Like, they've been the face of this era. And I think most people were like, Red Bull could do this. Red Bull could win this championship. Not only the Drivers' Championship, but the Constructors as well, after Sergio Perez won that race. And then it just sort of dipped off a little bit, didn't it? Sergio Perez made a mistake in the Great British Grand Prix in the sprint. It was in the sprint that Sergio Perez made a mistake and then had to start from the back of the grid on the Sunday. And then obviously, the first of many, many, many really big talking points between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen. Round 10, Lewis Hamilton takes the win. Charles Leclerc takes his only podium of the season. How on earth has Charles Leclerc only got one podium? He's been so good. Charles Leclerc takes his only podium, but only because Max Verstappen is taken out by Lewis Hamilton. Now, this is just one of those incidents that lit the fuse, I think. I think from Great Britain on was when this, Hamilton, Verstappen, headbutting, colliding, continually just going at each other started. I think Max Verstappen really didn't take well to being knocked out of the Great British Grand Prix. I think he thought that was a guaranteed win or at least second place for him, which would have been a massive, massive moment for him in the championship. But instead, it was 0 points and a huge 25-point swing for Lewis Hamilton. Similar in Hungary, right? Max Verstappen was already absolutely livid going into the Hungarian Grand Prix. And again, it's a Mercedes that takes out both of the Red Bulls in this case. Again, I think both of the Red Bulls would have probably finished in and amongst the podiums had it not have been for Valtteri Bottas playing a little bit of bowling with Lando Norris in there as well. But Lewis Hamilton does it again. Manages to get on the podium, second place finish. The win for Ocon, which is absolutely mental. Obviously, Sebastian Vettel his picture probably should be there, but isn't. Carlos Sainz instead picked up another podium in the Ferrari. Amazing work from Carlos Sainz. He's been on the podium so much in that Ferrari, considering it's the first year that he's in there. And then we had the summer break. And I think if we'd have had the summer break any earlier, there wouldn't have been so much talking point. There wouldn't have been so much speculation. I think the summer break came at the absolute perfect time for Max Verstappen, because he'd had 2 races in a row, Great Britain and Hungary, where he was looking like he was, pretty set for a podium or a win. And then they were snatched away from him with collisions, firstly with Lewis Hamilton, then with Valtteri Bottas in Hungary. Like, both of those positions were snatched away from him. And I think he needed that mental reset, especially because he's so young. I know we've seen him over the second half of this season. He's just been ice cold in terms of his driving, and so consistent, like ridiculously consistent as it goes. What's my favorite race this year? I will definitely get to that, Connor. I just want to have a little rundown of all. But yeah, I think that mid-season break came perfectly for Max Verstappen, because he needed that mental reset. We saw in Hungary he was just starting to maybe fray at the edges a little bit, wasn't he? We started to see him, shouting at the media a little bit, getting frustrated with questions about the crash in Great Britain, and it was starting to maybe divulge into this. Has Max Verstappen got the mentality? Has he got the real drive needed after 2 collisions that were completely not his fault, where he should have probably won those races if not been on the podium? Can he bounce back from that? And I think if he'd had to gone straight into a race, think if it had been like a triple header and Spa was right after Hungary, that would have been a lot trickier for him. I think it would have been really heavy on his, mentality to go straight into a next race. Instead, he had that opportunity to go back behind the scenes, spend a little bit of time, with the Red Bull team, with the guys in the factory, have that time off and almost reset, realize that he'd done so well in the first half of the season. These wins from Monaco through to Austria, and just the fact that he was so consistent with it. The fact that, when Lewis Hamilton did make the mistake, he was there in Italy to pick up the pieces, was massive. And he could reflect on that. He could, see the positives that he'd taken out of this season, rather than being in that headspace where he was just continually being asked about 2 crashes in a row, both with Mercedes, both with your championship rivals, over and over and over again. He was able to just take a step back from that, which absolutely accelerated him. Like, look at how he came out of the blocks after the break was insane. Belgium gets the win. Obviously, not really a race. I think Belgium is going to go down as possibly the worst race of the season, even though it's very close with Monaco. I know that Monaco we actually saw a race, whereas Spa we didn't see a race, but at least we saw, something in Spa. We saw, a really, really exciting qualifying under wet conditions. Whereas Monaco was just a bit of a, well, it's Monaco. It was a Monaco race. Whereas we came back with Spa with a little bit of a damp race. But Max Verstappen was there. He took that opportunity, took pole position. And you've got to take those opportunities when they arise. George Russell getting a podium as well in Spa, let's not forget. Then we had the Netherlands Grand Prix. And again, Max Verstappen, home Grand Prix, comes out of the blocks, absolutely flying. After that summer break, and now it's looking like, wow, is Max Verstappen just going to run away with this title? Because after the 2 races, he'd sort of made up almost for Great Britain and Hungary, where he would have probably won both of those races. Now he has got 2 more wins under his belt, and he's guaranteed himself being in that title fight. He's taken the lead in the title again and is now pushing forwards. Italy, so crucial. Another opportunity for those 2 to go wheel to wheel. Again, they go wheel to wheel. Again, they collide. And again, it just added so much to the drama of this season. The fact that, both times that they'd been on the same piece of track in Silverstone and then in Monza, they'd collided in a way where, well, in Silverstone, Hamilton was still able to finish the race. But this time around, both of them dropped out of the race. And I think it was quite important that both of them dropped out of this race. I think, again, if Max Verstappen had taken out Lewis Hamilton, and Max Verstappen had gone on to win this Grand Prix, I think we could have seen it snowball. We could have really seen Max Verstappen taking that momentum, 3 wins in a row, straight away after the summer break, and that really could have then snowballed for him. So the fact that both of them were left out of this race really, really turned a tide for this championship. Daniel Ricciardo getting a win. Thank you. Yes, I will take that for Mercedes. For McLaren every single day. Lando Norris on the podium again. Yes, please sign me up. Inject it into my veins. Then we had Russia, the most disappointing race of the year. I'm going to say that Russia is my least favourite race of the season. Now, am I a bit biased? Maybe just a tad. But I'm going to say, from a McLaren's fan perspective, I don't think you can argue with me in saying that Russia was horrible. It really, really was horrible. And I remember just sitting there watching Lando Norris, watching the rain fall, praying to every kind of god from all of the religions, even though I'm an atheist, to just do something. Just stop the rain. I was doing a rain dance. I was doing everything that I could, or an anti-rain dance, I guess. I was doing everything that I possibly could to urge Lando Norris to get that first win in Formula One. And it just wasn't to be. And it's just showing how dominant those two have been. Hamilton has, that battle with Lando Norris and is able to come out on top, even though Lando Norris had looked the better driver throughout 95% of the race. And Max Verstappen starts from 20th place on the grid and still comes in second place. I know that, the rain really caused a mix-up in the midfield and he was able to jump up massive amounts of places by going onto the tyres a little bit earlier than everybody else. But my goodness me, second place from 20th from Max Verstappen in a wet race, in a race where collisions could have occurred at any point. Wow. Just absolutely stunning, and it just shows that those two have been a level above everybody else this season. They've truly been in a class of their own. The fact that Max Verstappen was able to do that, I was so stunned by. But even with that incredible race, incredible action, and both title rivals on the podium again, Russia was horrible, and I hated it. Then we have Turkey. Valtteri Bottas getting the win in this one. Verstappen and Perez lining up behind him on the podium. And I can't remember Turkey being... Was Turkey good? I feel like it must have been. I don't know why Turkey is not standing out for me. But Valtteri Bottas... Maybe it's just because Valtteri Bottas won. It's not really standing out for me as one of those drives that was really, really crucial in this title battle. I guess it was Valtteri Bottas being able to hold off Max Verstappen and continue on for his one win this season has done really, really well there. And obviously those 8 points that he took off Verstappen are crucial now, otherwise they wouldn't be on the same points. I only just realised I'm looking at the F1 page. Yeah. Was going to say how well your graphics look. Well, thank you, Anne. But yeah, this is unfortunately not mine. That is the F1 website. But maybe next year. We're getting better at the graphics slowly over time. Russia was heartbreaking. Absolutely heartbreaking, Antonio. Just disgusting. Not biased, mate. But God, I agree. Yeah. Russia was the best race of the season by far objectively. Just pretend you don't have a favourite driver. It was amazing. I know what you mean. It was such a good race. It was a really, really fun race. And I know, I think, if Lando Norris would have won it, it would definitely be by far and away my favourite race of the season. But yeah, I'm just a little bit annoyed by that. Hello, Jeff. You all right, mate? Spy. Always knew there was something wrong about, and you just said, wow, an atheist. I'm sorry. Agnostic. I don't know if I don't know. I've just never really thought that I believed. But that's completely un-Formula 1 related. And then Jeff, Turkey was awful. Yeah, I can't remember Turkey at all. I just realised, I watched the highlights of the races towards the beginning of the season. I was like, I don't need to watch the highlights of the races after the summer break because I know those ones. But apparently I don't. I can't remember anything happening in Turkey. So Turkey happened. There we are. The United States Grand Prix was a good one as well. Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen going wheel to wheel again. Really, really good race. Max Verstappen coming out on top. And I think this was the point where I thought Max Verstappen was going to win this title. I think, Max Verstappen coming second in Turkey, winning in the United States, and then following that on with another win in Mexico. Really, really, for me, was like, yeah, I think Max Verstappen might have this. If we look at like since the summer break, he won what? Belgium, Netherlands, could have probably won Italy, give or take. Came second in Russia from absolutely nowhere. Came second in Turkey. Had won the United States Grand Prix. He'd won 4 of those races after the summer break and had been on the podium just consistently, like disgustingly consistently across Turkey and Russia as well. Like, he just looked so quick at this point, 18 races into the season. I think most of us thought it was done and dusted. To be honest, like, I don't think anybody predicted that Lewis Hamilton would have these incredible drives in Brazil, Qatar, and Saudi Arabia. Obviously, the last 3 races that we've had, Brazil, I genuinely, and I know that this is like recency bias, and I'm probably forgetting races, back in 2009 or whenever, or 2008 when Lewis Hamilton won his first championship. But I think Brazil was Lewis Hamilton's best drive ever. And I know I'm going to get stickling for that. But I just can't remember a driver being at the back of the grid, being, disqualified from qualifying, possibly unjustly. Obviously, the wing didn't meet the regulations. Mercedes say it was broken. Red Bull say it was cheating. I sit somewhere in between. But yeah, just the fact he was able to do it from 20th through the sprint race, so good in the sprint race. And I know that everybody was, just trying to keep position. He probably made up a lot more places in the sprint race than he expected, especially because people were like, you know what, I'm not racing Lewis Hamilton this weekend. Like, that is not who I'm racing. I'm just going to let him past. Like, that probably did happen for quite a few drivers in that sprint race. But then, to drop another 5 places and still win the race, just mesmerising for me. And to go through that incident with Max Verstappen, where both of them, again, went wheel to wheel. So many times. How many times have I said that in every single one of these? Like, they've been so close to each other, which is amazing considering they've been absolutely miles ahead of everybody else. But those two have just been able to be so close and consistently tucked in next to one another. Qatar, another great race from Lewis Hamilton, really consistent over the course of the weekend. Didn't look like anybody else was going to win that race to me. Lewis Hamilton just did it, signed, sealed, delivered, sent for him. And Alonso as well, getting a podium there. Lovely to see Alonso's face. Like, it's so crazy how many podium sitters we've had. Like, we've had Ferraris, all the way back. We've had Ferraris, we had Gasly and Vettel on the podium as well, Leclerc, Carlos Sainz again, George Russell on a podium. And then we had a double podium, obviously, for McLaren. They got a win. Just crazy to me. But Qatar, Alonso there joining the podium people, being all of those drivers in the top 12, is it now? Plus George Russell have been on the podium this season. And then Saudi Arabia, what more can I say? I've talked about it, over the course of this week and over the last couple of weeks, or was it? No, just this week. It was last weekend. It was Saudi Arabia is just gonna go down in history as one of those races. Like, what an inaugural race for the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. And we're back there again in March, and I cannot wait. Like, I was so 50-50 on Saudi Arabia. I thought it was going to be another boring, under the lights, like, I thought it was going to be kind of like a fast Monaco. It really delivered. It was so entertaining. I think there's a few corners they need to change. I think that turn 21, 22, 23 sort of weave is a little bit too dangerous for my liking. We saw lots of drivers getting it wrong over the course of the weekend through there. But I loved it. It had Singapore vibes, didn't it? Under the lights, in the darkness, the cars glistening as they fly around that circuit. And all of the incidents, the red flag after the safety car had come in. After the safety car had gone out for 3 laps, then a red flag, another red flag later on in the race, virtual safety car after virtual safety car. Every time Lewis Hamilton got closer to Max Verstappen, we were just teased with it, weren't we? Just teased with that ability for Lewis Hamilton to possibly put together a move. Then, of course, they actually collide. Lewis Hamilton's right front wing just disintegrates behind Max Verstappen as he brake checks him. Not going to go into whether it was a brake check or not. Talked about that in the video in the description. But my goodness me, just like how on earth this race delivered so much in one afternoon was mind-boggling to me. And of course, we round it up in round 22. Somebody asked, who was it? Oh, no. Who else was my favourite race of the season? No. Connor asked, my favourite race of the season. Now, I'm going to do a video after Abu Dhabi, and I've got lots of straw polls that I'm going to send out to you guys and get you to fill in with things like your driver of the year, your team of the year, your rookie of the year, all those kind of things. I want to know your thoughts and opinions so that when I make my video on them, I can sort of see where I sit in the general consensus of you guys as well. So that is coming soon. But obviously, I want to give Abu Dhabi the chance. Like, Abu Dhabi might be the best race of the season. We might see a change in who you think is driver of the year in terms of Abu Dhabi. You know, that things can swing in Abu Dhabi. So I do want to wait until after that's finished to give you like a full rundown of my opinion on those big factors. But I think of the races we've had so far, outside of my obviously McLaren bias for Italy and Monza, I thought Monza was a really good race otherwise. But my favourite race of the year is a great question. I don't think it's in the first half. Just because the first half of the season, even though there were some really lovely races in there, like Azerbaijan was a great race. I really enjoyed the Silverstone and Hungary race too. I don't think, the tension had really built up for me in the first half of the season. And I do love a good storyline. I think is what's going to, really point the narrative for me. Russia probably would be my favourite Grand Prix of the season had it not gone so wrong for Lando Norris right at the end. I'm slightly inclined to say something like Brazil or possibly Saudi Arabia. Is that recency bias though, or am I remembering that they were absolutely phenomenal? I'd love to know what are your guys' favourites. Everyone just reminded me that Turkey was awful, Turkey was boring, Turkey was awful, Turkey for Hamilton was crucial. For Verstappen, Hamilton's pit stop dilemma. Yeah, that's very true. Max will win, says Seto. I don't know. I hate good Lewis. He's always there. He's just so consistent. It's ridiculous. Hello, lads who are joining the chat. How are we? Wasn't Turkey when Hamilton had a pit stop for new Inters, made him finish 5th or 7th? I can't remember. I literally cannot remember Turkey. I remember, I can remember every single race of the season. I did watch the highlights for the first 5. I watched the highlights for the first 5 earlier on today, just to remind myself. But I was like, yeah, Baku I can remember. And then I was like, if I can remember Baku, surely I remember everything else. And I do, to an extent. Like, I remember the fact that, in Great Britain, they had that collision. In Hungary, we had the bowling, and then Ocon and Vettel going wheel to wheel throughout the entire race. Austria, just the dominance of Red Bull was insane. And then the second race in Austria where Lando Norris got that podium. Excellent stuff. The second half of the season, definitely remember all of those. All of them have been really, really good. Joe says Spa was his favourite race. I'm really worried that when I put these straw polls out, that people are going to do that. That people are just going to be like, yeah, Spa was the best race of the season. Nikita Mazepin, driver of the year. I feel like that might be the case. But hopefully you guys will be moderately sensible with your picks. I'm going to go for Brazil as my favourite race of the year. Now, I might be being biased in that I do absolutely love the Brazil track. The Brazil track is one of my favourites of all time. I am a person that thinks that the season should still finish in Brazil. I'm one of those. But that was just how it was when I started watching Formula One. I always remember Brazil being the end of the Grand Prix sort of season. I remember Lewis Hamilton winning his title there, and that was when I sort of started to get into Formula One a little bit more. So Brazil for me was probably the best race of the year. And I think it just had a little bit of everything. It had drama between the teams, didn't it? It had Mercedes and Toto Wolff, Christian Horner, Red Bull going head to head. Drama in the pit stops, drama off the track with the rear wing not meeting the specifications, and then Lewis Hamilton taking penalties and upgrades. Max Verstappen looking like he was just going to run away with it because Lewis Hamilton was at the back, and then suddenly Mercedes came out with this massive engine upgrade out of nowhere, and they just smashed through the field. Like, let's be honest, after Mexico, I think 99% of us were like, this is pretty much over. I think that was how it was. Like, after Mexico, I remember being like, wow, if Max Verstappen can get, one more win, I think this is pretty much over and done with. And Lewis Hamilton has just denied that every single week from then onwards. Brazil takes the win, Verstappen second. Qatar takes the win, Verstappen second. Saudi Arabia takes the win, Verstappen second. Like, he's just been there to deny him every single year. So I'm going to go for Brazil, probably my favourite race of the year. Closely followed by Russia. Maybe even Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia also had the drama. I do love a bit of drama. Hungary, though. Hungary was really exciting to watch, wasn't it? Just the fact that Ocon and Vettel and Lewis Hamilton was like, trying to catch up. And then Fernando Alonso with the defensive drive of a lifetime. Like, if you want one driver to be defending to the absolute hilt for you as a teammate, I think Ocon absolutely nailed it there with Fernando Alonso. He's definitely the man you want, isn't he? Hello, Doogie, mate. How we doing? That's a cool name. Hello, LaFerry. How we doing? I liked Monza. Lewis, the only car on the grid. When Lewis was the only car on the grid in Monza. No. That was in Hungary. When Lewis was the only car on the grid after the red flag, the rain stopped, and Lewis Hamilton stayed on the inters, and everybody else went into the pits and changed their tyres. That's why Lewis Hamilton then dropped backwards, had to really try and gain all the way through. Did McLaren do well in Italy? Just a little bit, just a tad little bit. I mean, mainly because Hamilton and Verstappen just crashed into one another. In all seriousness, I'd say Baku, although I'm supporting Max this season. It was a really good race in Baku, wasn't it? I think the only problem was if Baku, if we wouldn't have had Max Verstappen, doing that on the tyres, and the tyres just popping underneath him, and then Lewis Hamilton also making a mistake with his brake bias, I don't think it would have been too exciting. No, I don't know, actually. We did see some collisions. Yuki Tsunoda in the wall, Daniel Ricciardo in the walls, Carlos Sainz spinning around in various places. It was a very good race. I think just it's so tough, isn't it? All of the races this season just seem absolutely phenomenal, and it's really, really tough to judge which was best. But I will be doing that at some point. I'll be doing a tier list. In fact, I've got a tier list already ready. I might put the tier list up for you guys in the description on the race day, so that you can tier list what you think the races were, and then you can tweet them at me or send them to me on Instagram, or put them in the Discord as well, because I'd love to know your tier list of the races this season. But I'm going to be doing a video where I go through each race and try and tier them in order from best to worst in some way. But yeah, that is how we've got to this point. We've got 21 races in. There's been twists and turns. There's been tails. There has been penalties and red flags. There's been podiums, positions for 13 different drivers or something stupid. And here we are on level points. One more race to go. And 369.5 is the number. It's mad that there's a 0.5 in there as well. It's just insane that they are on the same number of points going into this final Grand Prix. 21 Grand Prix. Absolutely crazy. You love physics. Good. I'm glad. Baku, Monza, Russia, Saudi Arabia, my top 4. Ooh, no Brazil in there, James. I'm not sure about that. I do really. Maybe I'm biased. Maybe I'm misremembering Brazil as being much better than it actually was. I still want Max to win this Sunday, but his behaviour has tainted the feeling a bit. Internally conflicted. I mean, you just support who you want. Support who you want. Nobody can tell you who you need to support. Shall we do some predictions? Because I think it's a bit 50-50, isn't it? How people feel. Should we look at some predictions? If you want to put your prediction in on the community tab, then it will come up in this next section. So I'm just going to scroll through a few of your guys' predictions for this weekend. Mr. Peg says Hamilton, Bottas, Norris as his top three, getting the podium positions out of the way, and Max Verstappen not even in there. Driver of the day, Lando Norris. Wildcard, Ocon. Struggle is Schumacher. Oh yeah, by the way, I should probably mention that the format is you pick your podium, you pick your best driver, you pick your worst driver, and you're allowed one wild card. One driver you think, actually, you know what? If the stars align, then this driver could have an absolutely top tier weekend. I think picking Ocon as your wild card after he just had he's had a win this season and almost a second podium last time out in Saudi Arabia. I think that's a fairly safe bet. Ocon's had a very, very good season. Who is saying Hamilton, Verstappen, Bottas as our top three. Leclerc, you can't have double wild cards. Best drives Leclerc and stuff. I mean, he's gone for Ferrari there, right? We've gone Ferrari are going to have a good weekend. Wild card Alonso, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Russell. Not sure I agree with that. Tsunoda's been looking good over the past few races or so. Love that people are going for Lando as best drive, by the way. Max, Bottas, Lewis. Wow, Bottas ahead of Lewis. In what world are you living in? How on earth are Mercedes going to allow that to happen? If Bottas is anywhere in the vicinity, if Bottas was a lap up on Lewis Hamilton, and Lewis Hamilton was in third place and Valtteri Bottas was in second, Mercedes would ask him to switch. That is just the way that it is. That is undoubtedly going to happen. But I like it, just a guy. I like it. Lando, Schumacher wildcard. Love that you've gone for a Haas as your wildcard. Don't know why, but I do love the shout. Wouldn't be something that I do, but definitely something that I appreciate other people could. Hello, Mia. You're right. Charlie, first Bottas, second Hamilton. Again, how on earth are people having Bottas ahead of Hamilton here? It's a bit like if you said Sergio Perez are going to finish above Max Verstappen. Like, it's just not going to happen. The teams will, as soon as it looks like that's going to happen, the teams will intervene as quickly as they possibly can. Hamilton, Valtteri, Max. See, it's mixed, right? Hamilton at the top. Lewis Hamilton, 8-time world champion. Valtteri Bottas and Mercedes winning the Constructors' Championship. We'll talk about the Constructors actually in a second and sort of the rest of the grid. Well, he's gone all the way to 6th. Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc. Ooh, Carlos Sainz ahead of Charles Leclerc as well. Can Carlos Sainz finish ahead of Charles Leclerc in the 9 points? It's not great, is it? 9 points. It's not great looking for Carlos Sainz. 9 points to get ahead of Leclerc. That's a big swing that he'd need. He'd maybe need Leclerc to not finish in the points whatsoever. Lando Norris wildcard though. Struggler of the weekend, Sergio Perez. Quite a few people have said Sergio Perez is the struggle as well. Formula Carl was in the chat earlier on. You still here? It's gone from Verstappen DNF. My goodness me. And 16 replies, quite rightfully so. People are probably not happy with that shout. Bottas and Leclerc in there as well. Like it. I like it. Causing controversy in the chat. Engagement. I appreciate that. Perez, Verstappen, Hamilton, third. Bottas, DNF, and struggle from Conrad. Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Oh, people are getting there. Ricciardo third from Charlie. Kimi driver of the day. Yeah, I think Kimi driver of the day. Pretty much guaranteed at this point, isn't it? Best driver Ricciardo. People really thinking that Ricciardo are going to turn up in this Grand Prix, which I'm enjoying. I'd love to see Ricciardo do it one more time. I think it's not been their season, has it? You know, the McLaren boys. It looked like it was going to be Lando Norris' season to sort of really step up, but since Russia, he's struggled a bit. And you know what? You can't really blame him. It's been very tough on Lando Norris since Russia. Should have been his first ever win in Formula One. It's a bitter pill to swallow if you're Lando Norris. Wildcard Vettel, love that. First strange glove. Not sure what you mean. Struggle Gasly. To be fair, I think it would be Bottas win if Max DNFs, causing the final race. Yeah, I suppose the only way Bottas wins this race is if Verstappen DNFs, but Hamilton continues, and Hamilton is maybe 7th or 8th, but it's all over. It's all over and and done and dusted. Do you think people are changing their tunes about their favourite driver because of behaviour from one race? Maybe. I don't think so, though. I think most Max fans know how he drives. They're fans of Max because of that tenacity that he has. The fact that he does always push the limit of the car, push the limit of what is allowed. Like, most Max fans are Max fans for that reason, aren't they? Always. Do you think Max will DNF could happen? I mean, we've seen Kimi Räikkönen in the wall at turn 14 today. Bit disappointed for him, obviously, in his final race in Formula One. But we've seen him in the wall. We've seen mistakes. We saw lots of drivers in the wall in Saudi Arabia over the course of the weekend as well. It is there's quite a bit of runoff here, but there are some sections that are, quite tight and in amongst the walls, mainly that hotel section that we've got is very, very tight indeed. Hence why we saw Kimi Räikkönen making a little bit of a mistake. If he drives like he did last week, he'll DNF. Yeah, I think you're probably right, Mia, but there's more on the line this time, isn't there? I think, if they do crash into one another, it's going to be months until we find out who's this world champion. Like, if the Red Bull and the Mercedes collide, undoubtedly there's going to be talk and talk and talk and legal battles and team battles and months of just waiting to see if, Verstappen gets disqualified or gets a penalty, or if he doesn't, then Mercedes will go to the FIA and the officials. Like, if the two cars do come together and both of them either DNF or it means that both of them finish outside the points or whatever, and it is Max's fault, we're going to see like loads and loads and loads and loads and loads of like repercussions from that afterwards. Let's sort of summarize then. We're going for nearly an hour. My goodness me. Sorry, I feel like I've rambled on about this season. But you guys have been wonderful and you've stopped by. 23 likes. That is absolutely sensational. If we could get that up to 30, can we get that up to that? I don't know if we've ever had a pre-race preamble get up to 30. Lots of people watch it like after the fact. Even though I do it live, it gets more views like later on. I feel like people watch it on a Saturday just before the Grand Prix. Let's quickly have a rundown then. We've talked about the top two enough. Valtteri Bottas in third place, 218 points. Obviously, Sergio Perez now mathematically cannot catch Valtteri Bottas, so he's going to finish the season in third. A really good finish for Valtteri Bottas in his final year in Mercedes. He was never of the level of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen, in my opinion, this year. He never looked like he was going to be anywhere close to those two, but nobody did. And it is a shame for Valtteri Bottas that he never really had that chance to go for a world championship title whilst he was in the best team. But Lewis Hamilton's just been in a league of his own since Valtteri Bottas has been there, so it's been tough for Valtteri, but he's moving on to Alfa Romeo next year, and I wish him all the best. I think he'll do really, really well there. I think him and Zhao, that young driver, older driver dynamic will really help the team to move forward. Sergio Perez in fourth place, again guaranteed fourth place now. A really good fourth place finish for Sergio Perez, his first year in that Red Bull car. Hasn't finished too far off Valtteri Bottas. Obviously, Valtteri Bottas could extend that lead a little bit more, but considering it's his first year, considering, that second Red Bull seat is always seen as very cursed, and for a lot of good reason, he's not done too bad. It's here where the talking points are. 5th through 7th, they could all change places fairly easily. We've seen Charles Leclerc on the podium. We've seen Lando Norris on the podium. We've seen Carlos Sainz on the podium. And any of those three, if they won this race, I wouldn't be too surprised by that. So I think, Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris and Carlos Sainz could finish any way round. Obviously, Ferrari are bringing a little bit more momentum. Lando Norris kind of had the first half of the season where he looked really, really good. And then the first sort of 3 or 4 races after the summer break. And it's kind of dipped off then. And that's when Ferrari have really kicked on. It seems like Ferrari in the last 5 races, I'd say, have looked exceptionally quick compared to sort of their midfield rivals. And even have been up and amongst it with Bottas and Perez at times. And both Ferraris have just been really, really consistent all year. As I said, Charles Leclerc only 1 podium finish, and yet he's ahead of Lando Norris, who's got, 3, 4 podium finishes? Carlos Sainz, who's got 3 podium finishes. Daniel Ricciardo, who's got a win. Ocon, who's got a win. And yet Leclerc is the driver, head and shoulders above some of those guys underneath. Daniel Ricciardo in 8th place, pretty much guaranteed 8th place. Can he move? Pierre Gasly would have to get 3rd place and a fastest lap, or 2nd place or 1st place to go above Daniel Ricciardo. So I think that's pretty much settled. Not terrible, but not really what I expected from Daniel Ricciardo. I think if you take away, that sort of out there win, I don't think you'd say Daniel Ricciardo, I was going to say deserved the win. He definitely deserved the win. He put together a wonderful performance in Monza, but when it comes to, that win, it was a bit of an anomaly. Let's say it was a bit of an anomaly for the season. If you take those 25 points away, or even if you take like 15 of those points away, and he's just on 100 with Pierre Gasly, 54 points off of his teammate, 50 points off the Ferraris, it then looks a little bit trickier for Daniel Ricciardo. Obviously, in a brand new team, though, really struggled with the setup of that McLaren car. I don't think he had too much input into the McLaren car at the beginning of the season. He's slowly sort of come to fruition. He's had very up and down races, hasn't he, Daniel Ricciardo? I think it's a bit of a season to forget for Daniel Ricciardo fans, apart from that win, though, I guess. So that win does really put a shining light on what has been a fairly up and down season. It's had a real high in that win, but some really drastic lows for Daniel Ricciardo as well. Like, he's been so off the pace at times and has really struggled to even get into Q3 at times in that McLaren car. It has not looked anywhere near the pace that we were expecting. Pierre Gasly, exceptional season. I'm very biased, but he is wonderful. He is one of my favorite drivers ever. He will go down as just phenomenal for me. I think he's got everything that you need to be a world champion, and I hope that he gets some opportunity in a faster car soon, or just a more consistent car with a team that maybe doesn't go for really weird strategy choices. I think Pierre Gasly could be further up the table had it not been for AlphaTauri, sometimes rolling the dice when they really don't need to. But yeah, Pierre Gasly, obviously with a podium this season as well, done exceptionally well. Alonso and Ocon, so close to one another, 77 and 72. Alonso obviously with that recent podium, Ocon with a win, and then also nearly a podium last time out, missed out on 0.1 of a second to Valtteri Bottas. The Alpines have just been great. Just been really good. I think Ocon started the season really, really well, while Fernando Alonso found his feet. Then Ocon had a bit of a dip, sort of Monaco through Silverstone. Ocon looked really off the pace, but then had a chassis change and sort of kicked back into gear again. Alonso, as I said, maybe took those first 4 or 5 races to really click into gear, but then from sort of Baku onwards has looked really good, really consistent. And yeah, I don't know if I expected more from Alpine. I think they're about where I expected them to be. That sort of 5th best team, and a really good driver pairing, like really balanced between those two. And they've got a great relationship as well. The fact Alonso did so much battling for Ocon when they got that win in Hungary. And, you heard Alonso when he got that podium in Qatar, jeering on Ocon and asking Ocon to, really put in a defensive performance on Perez. And they both give it their absolute all every single weekend. I do like the dynamic that they've got in Alpine. And considering at the start of the season, I was a bit sort of meh on Alpine. I thought Ocon was like all right, but not amazing. And I thought Alonso would really struggle to actually get back into Formula One properly. They've really propelled themselves on this season. I'm very, very impressed with where Alpine have put themselves. Sebastian Vettel and Lance Stroll, not too much to talk about. Aston Martin have kind of disappeared into nothingness. Their season has very much dwindled out for me. Obviously, Vettel with a podium this season, Stroll not. Sort of Stroll is that first driver that hasn't had a podium this season, isn't he? And Stroll's done all right. Vettel's done all right. Can't remember any exceptionally good drives. Vettel obviously with the podium in Baku, but that came because Max Verstappen hit the wall and Lewis Hamilton obviously messed up his brake balance. Probably the drive in Hungary is the one we'll remember for Sebastian Vettel, but I think there's also been some teething problems there for him at Aston Martin. And as we said with Sergio Perez and Daniel Ricciardo, there are going to be teething problems when you move to a new team, and he's just getting back into the swing of things. I think that final season at Ferrari must have been crushing for him. he went to Ferrari because he wanted to follow in the steps of Michael Schumacher, his absolute idol, and it just never quite came to fruition for him. And then the way that he left Ferrari as well, I think left a bit of a bitter taste in his mouth. But yeah, his cons Aston Martin has been pretty good, had an okay season. And as I said, I don't think the Aston Martin car has really been that great. So he's probably done the most that he could with it at the time. And Lance Stroll's just been a bit okay, been all right, been a little bit annoying at times, has got in the way of Sebastian Vettel at times as well. Which has maybe frustrated the Aston Martin team just that tiny bit. Yuki Tsunoda, it's tough, right? He's a rookie. But that 80 gap point to your teammate, that is a hell of a gap. That is a chunky old gap. Like if you look at all the other teams, I suppose apart from Bottas and Hamilton and Perez and Verstappen, but they're just in an absolute league of their own. If you look at all those midfieldy teams, Norris and Daniel Ricciardo, even though I've said Daniel Ricciardo's been much, much worse, isn't too many points off, 40 points off. Carlos Sainz, Charles Leclerc, 9 points the gap between them. Ocon, Alonso, 5 points between them. Vettel and Stroll, 9 points. Like it's that sort of gap of like 5 to 10 points is kind of where we're at with most of those midfieldy teams. And then just Yuki Tsunoda, Pierre Gasly, 80 points the gap. That is huge. I don't think Yuki Tsunoda has had a great rookie season. I think it's been good enough to warrant him keeping his seat in Formula One. And I don't think he's really been to blame a lot of the time, if I'm honest. I think every time he's really looked like he might kick into gear, something's just absolutely crushed his confidence. Like he looked like he was really starting to take step forward, and then was it Monza where he hit the wall in qualifying, and again just sort of got called out by the Red Bull Association and by all of the Red Bull people as being a bit stupid, and like that knocked him back a little bit, and they then changed his training regime. They made him move house. They like uprooted him and changed everything about what he knew and was doing. And then Yuki Tsunoda again was starting to build momentum a little bit in the second half of the season. Looked really, really good in Mexico qualifying, and then got in the way of the Red Bulls, got told off by Marco, got told off by Christian, and just lost another bit of confidence, to be honest with you. But has looked okay in, quite a lot of the races. I think, we need to see him in a car where he can properly attack the drivers in front. I think the AlphaTauri is kind of played to Gasly's strengths a little bit. Like it looks like a very, very quick qualifying car under Pierre, doesn't it? Like he can just get one lap out of that car, which is absolutely phenomenal. And then he's pretty good at defending that position or taking a decent route throughout the race where he can just keep going and consistently pick up those points. Whereas Yuki Tsunoda hasn't been able to quite get that qualifying pace in the car, hasn't been able to get that one lap out of the AlphaTauri. And then in the races has kind of been bogged down by the fact that the race pace of the AlphaTauri has been nowhere near as good as some of the qualifying pace we've seen from it. And he hasn't been really able to attack the guys in front of him with that energy that we want from Yuki Tsunoda. George Russell, his final season at Williams, 16 points, a great return, and a podium as well to boot. The first podium for Williams in God knows how many years. It was a very, very long time coming, and I'm glad George Russell had that opportunity to celebrate with the team in that way. Yes, it came at a race that was a bit contentious. Yes, it came at a race that wasn't really a race, and it was half points and so on and so forth. But George Russell has been excellent throughout the season, has kind of dipped off over the last sort of 6 races, but he's probably got his eye on next year. Doesn't want to, crash into a wall or crash into something, cause himself an injury, be out for a year, and then miss his first ever year in the Mercedes car. I think that's absolutely fair enough that that George Russell has kind of got one eye on the Mercedes car for next year, rather than really pushing the Williams to the absolute limits over the last few races or so. Kimi Raikkonen, his last year in Formula One, 10 points in that Alfa Romeo, which actually is a really good return now that we look at it and from the season as a whole. Latifi with 7 points. Also really good considering how slow that Williams was. That Williams really burst into the second half of the season, didn't it? Like Spa was a real surprise with George Russell being on the podium. And then the next few races, the Williams looked really, really good. What was it? Austria, where was it Austria where George Russell got into Q3 and looked like he might get the points for the first time, and then it just all sort of shredded away from him. But yeah, both Williams have been pretty good this season. Giovinazzi, a little bit disappointing for him. I'm so glad he picked up another couple of points, because 1 point with 20 races gone just didn't reflect the kind of season that he'd had. He'd been really good. He's just that nearly driver all the time. I think he's finished 12th place more than anybody else, and 11th place so many times as well. Like, he was just always so close yet so far away. And I think that is what is eventually cost him his seat in Formula One, obviously, on top of the fact that he hasn't got enough money compared to Zhao, who is going to come in next year. And then the two Hasses propping up the table, the two rookies. I think both of them have had okay first seasons in Formula One. Mick Schumacher's actually had a lot more incidents than Nikita Mazepin. I know that because Mazepin has the Mazespin, nickname because he spun off in Bahrain. But actually, Mick Schumacher's been the one in the wall a lot more often of the two. And Mick Schumacher really has struggled to really get to grips with that Haas car. I'm just hoping that both of them get a little bit of a better car next year and can maybe, even if they can just fight the team in front of them, even if the Haas's just had enough pace to fight one of the Alfa Romeos every now and then, or one of the Williamses every now and then. But they really don't. They're just absolutely in a league of their own in the worst possible way, down in 19th and 20th. And to round it out then, the Constructors' Championship. I think Mercedes are going to run away with it. I think Red Bull are going to be second. I don't think there's any changes that are going to happen to this entire table over the course of this weekend. Alpine have done really well to consolidate that 5th place. I know Pierre Gasly was propping up the AlphaTauri team and kind of had to do a 2 versus 1 with the Alpines. But the Alpines have made it count in the right way, and they've been able to take that lead and take that win. Aston Martin then 77 points. Don't think they're going to catch anyone. I don't think they can they statistically? No, they can't get anywhere near enough points to catch those guys in front. Williams in 23, Alfa Romeo, and then Haas, of course, at the bottom. And I think this is just going to be how it ends. Red Bull can technically, mathematically take first place in the Constructors' Championship, but it's not going to happen. I think Mercedes are going to take that one as a win. Final thing then. 953 votes. Sorry, I was going to say 593. It's 953 votes. Who takes home the Drivers' Championship? Max Verstappen with 38% of the vote. Lewis Hamilton, 62%. The ball is in the Britain's court. Lewis Hamilton is your guys' vote as to who is going to win this World Drivers' Championship. But we're going to have to wait and see, ladies and gentlemen. We've got qualifying live tomorrow at 12:30 midday UK time. And then the race at exactly the same time the next day on Sunday. It really is all down to this. Both drivers on the same points going into the final race of the season. And we're going to be here. We're going to be live and we're going to watch all of it together. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you so much for watching throughout the entire season. And I'll see you tomorrow.